John Wesley was preaching that message as well. They were expecting radical transformation. So coming back to what a disciple was, what did we define that as? One of this, be
with Jesus.
With Jesus.
Become.
And become like Jesus. Now, a little plug as well for the Practicing the Way course I think I shared on Saturday. They make the case that spiritual formation is essentially becoming like Christ. Romans 8, we've been conformed into his image. In fact, he rebukes the church in the Galatian church, and he goes, I'm grieving because you're like infants, but until you would actually be formed in Christ. So he would put three elements. Number one is truth or stories. Stories form us. And then we have habits. And we have community. And then ultimately, this is people are being formed. Spiritual formation is not a Christian thing, it's a human thing. Everybody's being formed differently. It's been happening since the moment that we've been born. Our society around us has been forming us. Our habits, the voices, the influence, the stories that we've heard are forming us. But when it comes to spiritual formation, we're talking about allowing the Holy Spirit to form us, and we've already been formed. And I think that this is the truth that Bass is talking about, the stories that many people don't actually believe that it's possible to walk as Jesus does, even though we look in 1 John 2, where it says, he who abides in him, it starts with abiding, must walk just as Jesus walked. Do we actually believe that? Or do we believe that it's some inferior version that is just slightly better than the pagans around us? Have we been successful in being able to walk out the mandate that Jesus has commissioned us to actually offer a new humanity? So I think that this truth, if we can saturate people with truth, which is around the righteousness message, believe that we can actually live free, that we can abide in him constantly, that we can walk free from sin, that is going to be the radical transformation that I believe is going to be the DNA that we're going to see massive multiplication.
Come on. Yeah.
You got somebody like John Wesley. Now, John Wesley, he was a man of habits. But then after meeting the Moravians, he had a radical encounter that actually shifted his life. And he does this whole seminar actually on Christian perfection. Some people could argue with some of the premise of that. But they actually believed that as the Methodists, that they could live free from sin.
Yeah.
And so they formed people into communities for accountability. There was a high level of habits. It would be, somebody was telling me that the Methodists were fasting like twice a week and different things like that. So they were engaged in that. They were in communities, in bands, and classes, and societies. And then there was this truth that was permeating all of that. If we can, these are the controllables. If we can saturate ourselves with the truth of the Word of God, the habits is really where practicing the way. I think that's, we're talking about Sabbath, we're talking about fasting, we're talking about these practices of Jesus. Now, Eugene Peterson said this: when the way of Jesus, when you marry the Jesus way with the Jesus truth, then you get the Jesus life. So what is the Jesus way? He lived a life in communion with the Father. He fasted for 40 days. He spends extended time in silence and solitude. There was a pattern and a rhythm in how he was living his life. Plus the Jesus truth equals the Jesus life. And so I think that that's a great picture here, is that truth plus habits plus community, if we can actually offer the DNA of what a disciple truly looks like, that will reproduce. Just in the same way that the Methodists reproduced, there was 1 in 6 in the U.S. were actually Methodists at some point. Salvation Army is another. William Booth actually wrote a book on purity. He says, you in the Salvation Army should get on your knees and believe that you will actually have that encounter where you will cross the line and experience radical purity. So that's the become like Jesus. Be with Jesus, become like Jesus. So if that's our first step, where do we go from there? What's next? Do what Jesus does. What does that mean? What's the whole purpose in doing what Jesus does, particularly when we're talking about on the earth? What's the purpose of that? Destroying the works of the enemy. What's he doing? He's doing signs and wonders and miracles.
To bring freedom to others.
Bring freedom to others.
Make disciples.
Make disciples.
Can you see that even the signs and wonders and miracles and all the different things that he's performing is ultimately leading towards what? Making disciples.
Salvation.
So this is where we see this is the be with Jesus, become like Jesus. And that's all about abiding in him and becoming love. Being with love and becoming love. So the next step here is that we want to actually go and make disciples. So how do we go and make disciples? What are some of the things that we need to do? We've talked about this over the course of the weekend. We're going to find them. How are we going to find them?
Train.
All right, I'm going to get Bass to come here. So he's a great example of, let's say, we've given some tools. Do we feel like we've got some ideas?
Yeah.
How we can have our cup overflowing.
Yeah.
Communion with the Father, abiding in him, leaning into this message of righteousness so that we become like. So once you're in that place, not once you're in the place, I think that there's a danger there. People are like, I'm going to wait until this kind of a supernatural encounter happens before I do anything. Don't do that. In the going. So, overflowing. Now, he's like, okay, I'm being with Jesus, I'm becoming like Jesus, and now I want to do what Jesus does, which is all leading towards go and make disciples. What is he going to do? Find another one. How? What does his time look like? So he's cleared his schedule, he's taking Sabbath, he's decluttering his life. What's he going to do now? Street evangelism? Sure, okay, so that's one opportunity, so it could be sowing seeds. Oikos, what a great place to start. Oikos, so if there's people that are far from God, he can start to share the gospel with them. Where else can you find somebody? At work? Yep. Church? Yes. All right. So we got sowing seeds anywhere. We've got oikos. We've got sort of affinities. Now you had some examples of that. I think. What were a couple of examples of affinities that you guys were leading into?
Yeah, the gym, sauna. Sauna's a big one. It's fun. Yeah, so what else I did? Football, play soccer, football.
So how many things, what would be the priority if you look at street evangelism, oikos, and affinities? What's the low-hanging fruit? The low-hanging fruit. When you're thinking about could be affinities, could be oikos. Probably not street evangelism. So oikos, because why is oikos a potential low-hanging fruit when it comes to disciple making? Existing relationships. He's already formed that relationship, because if you start here, you don't have any relationship. And I witnessed, Cornelia and Damien, they had absolutely no relationship. I went on a boat to Christian-Motherlow Island, and you just encountered it, boom, and you've been building relationship on the other end.
Yeah.
It's harder, it's amazing, and it totally works. But the low-hanging fruit oftentimes is found in oikos and affinity.
It was something that I was already doing.
That was already as you were going. Yeah.
Each fortnight I was going on that ship, so he was already there.
There you go. Affinities could be on your ship. All right, what else? So if we want to, and by the way, what are we looking for? So if we're looking for somebody to disciple, what are we looking for? What is Bass looking for? A person in peace. How do we define a person in peace?
Someone who's faithful, available.
Open and curious? Yep. What else?
Faithful, available, and teachable.
Faithful, available, teachable.
And the 3 M's.
And the 3 M's. What was that? The M's, so the message. We've got it all on the website if you want to look them up. Messenger. Mission. So we're looking for somebody that's not just going to be a dead end. You look at the cups, right? So if his cup's overflowing, he's going, and what is he looking for?
Other cups.
Other cups, not just to invest into, but that will overflow into other people. So these are 3 areas. What are some other things that he could be doing to find these types of people? Praying, yeah. What else? Training. Where could Bass start to start training individuals to find? So these ones are starting with the unsaved, or actually these oikos could potentially be Christians as well. So that could be a training opportunity. So you got the unsaved, but what about the saved? Is there an opportunity there?
Yeah. Yeah.
What could we use to train them? 411, great. Now, how do we get to the point where we can train an individual? Let's say first of all, let's say this is Tim here. Now, he's got a heart for disciple making. How does he connect with Tim? How does he get to the point of training? So if you can come here, Tim. So he's a Christian of peace. How do you come in contact with somebody like Tim? How do you have a conversation with him so that you could actually train him to see if he does something and he becomes that fatter person, faithful, available, teachable, and reproducing? How do we know this? Build relationships, okay? Vision cast. Vision cast is a really good one. So building relationships with him. So how does he get in proximity with Tim? What's that? Hang out, right. But first, so I think this is where we can start to think, okay, where can we find Christians that might have training opportunities? And I think the gym and the gym could be places, yeah. But you guys have really followed, if you listened to their interview yesterday, they've really seen training opportunities through prayer and also through relationship. And also asking, is there somebody else that we could train?
Yeah.
And also through, like some of those 4 weeks that were evangelism, street evangelism.
Yeah.
A Christian. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting concept as well, is that you can be sowing seeds, hoping to find a person of peace that's unsaved, but instead you find a Christian, and then you find a Christian, and that's actually what happened with Troy when he found, what's his name? Not Shane, the other one.
Maximilian.
Maximilian, yeah. Maximilian. They were just in a skate park. So, how many of you feel like that you know how to cast vision to a Christian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many are a little unsure in that space?
After this weekend, I think we're a bit more equipped because we know what a disciple, looks like. What an abiding one looks like.
Come on. Well, let me put Bass on the spot. How are you going to cast vision to see if Tim might potentially be a fatter person?
As in interact, like that word. Alright. Tim, you fat.
That's why he's at the gym.
I actually don't know what I would do. To cast vision in order to see if, I would be like, hey, bro, you want to catch up and read the Bible?
Actually, guys, you don't want to
Catch up and read the Bible?
I was thinking for me, and this is the start of this whole point of this weekend, is at every point, I'm going to have to take a risk, and I'm going to have to open my ass.
Yeah.
And there's going to essentially be like an invitation, because I'm not going to know if I don't open my mouth. And I will have no idea whether it's some random person, someone that I know, whatever, but I'm going to have to take a risk. And maybe actually, not that I want them to be my friend, but actually to be like a friend to them, Jesus to them. Not that, I think one of the biggest things that I have struggled to not even want to be involved in this is because I don't want to make people feel like they're my project. And it's like, God help me to love them, because I don't know how to do this. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to start with love.
Everyone's a project.
A couple of things that, go ahead.
It's another product.
tell me how's things going with the Lord? Like, what's the Lord showing you lately? And then, have you seen anyone come into the kingdom recently?
That's a great place to start, yeah. Have you seen anybody coming into the kingdom recently? And so many times I'll ask what their vision is, like, hey, what's on your heart in terms of,
What gets you excited?
yeah, so what gets you excited? If they've already had that on, I would really love to reach people. I've met so many people like this. It's like, I'm too afraid, but I'm so passionate for souls. It's like, oh, okay. Then my ears are pricking up. Go ahead.
Just thinking sometimes when you ask what their testimony is, it often reveals their passion.
Asking for the testimony.
And that's a really nice
Yeah.
testimony.
Yeah. So Troy calls this Great Commission conversations. If you can have a lot of Great Commission conversations, you can potentially find people to train. And if you can find people to train, you can see if they'll actually put it into practice.
I just tell them about what I'm doing. And say, oh, this is what I've been doing.
Yep.
See, people pick up, and then you're going to see them just enthusiastic and tell them.
Exactly. Yeah. You tell your testimony.
They catch it.
Listen to them. You tell your testimony. That's one of the things I'll refer. Hey, I prayed for this girl this little girl, she's 60 years old, in the mall, and prayed for her back because she got healed, and now we're running a micro church, and see what kind of enthusiasm. If they're really starting to get enthusiastic about it, that could be a training opportunity, and it could be an opportunity to take that next step. So let's say Tim is now showing some interest. He's like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm actually really passionate about souls. How are you gonna pitch that? How are you gonna transition to training?
Yeah. So transitioning from, oh, he's passionate, he's keen.
You're picking up those vibes. You've
Yeah.
told your testimony, or he's like, yeah, I'm passionate about winning souls, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah, true. I'd probably say, oh, hey man, have you heard of the 3 circles, or have you done an Oikos map? Like 4-1-1, I guess, would be a good place. That's normally what I did on Sunday with these 2 guys who are Christians. We met them, and before coming down here, I was like, oh, I've heard of the 3 circles before. Or, like, you normally say that to non-believers, but you do that with Christians as well. And yeah, and they were like, no, what's that? And yes, I'd probably look at doing some tools.
Yeah.
So good.
One thing I found was asking them what are the barriers that they've already identified in pursuing whatever the
Absolutely.
it is that they're
Yeah.
revealing. It's like, they're like, oh, I really want to see.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what's stopping you?
Totally.
And then, okay, boom, I'm going to step in there and I'm going to fill the hole, whatever the hole is.
It's good. You know, Luke and I were in the Philippines, and there was this guy that we were eating street food. Were you there? Yeah, this guy comes out and he preaches the gospel, like really passionate, on a megaphone, and then he takes off. And we're like, man, okay, he's taking steps, but we don't know what's happening after that. So we literally ran up to him like, hey man, come and tell us the story. And then I got Luke. I'm like, hey Luke, why don't you go and share the 3 circles with this team? So as I'm talking to her, Luke is sharing the gospel with these ones using the 3 circles. I said, hey, why don't you come in and have a look? She's actually sharing the gospel with them. And so she was able to, they got to the point where, they're like, there's nothing that's holding me back. Oh, thanks, bro. save my shirt. But anyway, that was an opportunity. We're like, hey, this guy is keen to actually share the gospel. And as a result, we're looking at training opportunities. So thanks, bro.
Wow.
All right, let's say now we know what to do. All of you have a picture. Let's say if I get Neil over here. So Neil, let's say he's got Tim now, he's starting to train. And Neil, he shared the 3 circles with, they were sawing together. No, you shared, he's a Christian that you're starting to train. He's a Buddhist that was in the, the sauna, and they're getting all sweaty together. He shared the gospel with him, and he says, yes, he says, I'm in brokenness, and I want to follow Jesus. Where do we go from there? Where do we go from there? We invite them to the house, catch up. What's up?
Depends on their question, like DBS or
DBS, Commands of Christ. Great.
Chris? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if they said yes to the 3 circles, they couldn't get baptized.
Yeah.
Go through baptism and then get them baptized ASAP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting plugged into a discovery
Getting
group.
baptized ASAP.
Yeah.
So,
You
so
believe.
reflecting back on this cup story,
If there's
here,
a
right?
sauna, there's water.
So the cups here, what do we want to do? Jesus invested deeply into the few.
Yeah.
So does this, at this point, does this mean Bass is investing deeply into these 2 guys?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Why?
To train the many and see how their responses are to the few weeks, few months, and then go deeper.
Right. So in order to go, you have to go broad, because not everybody's going to be a person of peace or a fatter person. So you got to train broadly to filter the few. So at this next step, where Bass is like, I'm ready, I'm making time in my life to really be able to pour my life in. What he could potentially do is to invest into Tim, and he's like, I'm hungry. And so it's like, bro, we're going to catch up 2-3 times a week, and I'm going to invest into you, but this is going on now for 3 months, and Tim hasn't actually shared the gospel yet. So that's a potential downfall.
Yeah.
So how do we know when to invest? Fatter. So what's practically we're going to look at in his life or Neil's life? Yeah.
If they're doing what you showed them,
If they're doing what you showed them, yeah.
they're hungry for more of that.
And they make themselves available.
That was something that was really interesting that Steve and Mel that are seeing, they've seen 4-generation multiplication in Australia for Koreans, Indigenous, and Army. And they said the person of peace, they said that it's very important that the person of peace is sharing before they really invest into them, because ultimately if you get somebody that is not sharing first, they actually set the culture for the next person that comes in. But if he's one that is sharing, then you bring other people into that environment, then you begin to create a culture where it's automatically happening. You're setting the dominant culture. So now, let's say he's had a bunch of great commission conversations. Maybe he's even talked to some leaders. He sat down with them in the church. He's like, hey, what's your vision? You find a pastor that's like, I actually have a vision to reach my area. I've really got lostness on my heart. You guys do this beautifully. And but where do you feel like you're stuck? Well, we don't really know how to actually get our people equipped to be able to do something like that. Or just our discipleship pathway doesn't seem to be working. I'm like, oh, that's a great opportunity. So maybe I'll get Tejas to come here. So Tejas is a pastor over here. And so he's talked to this pastor over in Toowoomba, and Tejas has got a vision for his region, but he doesn't know how to get there. And it's like, man, we've actually been learning some things from Troy and the team or from No Place Left. Maybe if you gathered a few together, maybe I could come and show you some of those things. So that's a training opportunity. Now Tejas has these lovely ladies here, Ali and Dorcas. You guys want to come up? So now there's a training opportunity. So again, what are we looking for?
Persons of peace.
Persons of peace. Fatter people. People that are actually going to put it into practice. Now he continues to sow the seeds, and he wins Davina to the Lord, so Davina can come up. And he's street witnessing, and he comes across Lympha, and she's keen.
Yes.
But now his week is completely full because he's got catch-ups with all of these different individuals. What are you going to do now?
Some of these people are going to have to help take them on you can't do it all.
Yep.
Whoever the key people who are showing the most maybe initiative to take on more, he's going to help them to now do what he's been doing for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on. So out of these people, who does he want us to really invest his time into most?
Neil and Tim.
Yeah.
What are the likely signs, practically, when we talk about fatter? What are the signs that is demonstrating them being a fatter person?
Reproducing.
Willingness to reproduce. The willingness to want to reproduce.
Willingness to reproduce. Now, Davina is actually a great example of a fatter person. We've trained a lot of people. She's very slim, but she's a fatter person. And, you know, what was it, within a short period of time, was it 5 weeks or so, of receiving the training, you had already launched the microchurch, and maybe only a few weeks later you had launched another 5. So you gathered people, trained them, brought them into a microchurch, and then had launched them into other microchurches as well. That's a great illustration of a fatter person, right? So let's say we got Neil here. Now, what's another example if Neil was a fatter person?
And L3.
Yep.
Oh, no.
So level 3 is a multiplier. So what could a scenario look like?
Shared with the rest of his family and his family team as well.
Yep.
Started sharing with them.
You started sharing with them, yeah. So what do you do now? If out of all of these people, Neil is showing the best sign of being a fatter person, how is Bas going to invest his time with Neil? Or what's he going to do with him, Robbie?
Spend more time with them.
Yeah.
Spend more time with him. Life on life. So he's got access. Let's say his oikos now has been opened. What are we going to do with them?
Coaching
Coaching.
them to coach others.
Yeah. So either you could train, and he might have this. He's like, I got this. I can run a discovery group with my oikos. Or he's like, you know, I've shared with a bunch of. They seem to be open, but I'm not sure what to do next. What should he do then? So this is the great opportunity to be able to invest, not only just catching up and say, well, you know, now that you've actually shared with your oikos, why don't we go together and I can model with you, model, assist, watch, and launch, and to invest deeply into. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
All right, so that's the step 1. Step 2. So you're going. Step 2 is now you have people, lots of people that are potentials. When you have lots of people that are potentials, what do you need to do? You need to
Sift.
filter so that you can invest. And then after you filter them, what do we need to do? Invest. Now let's just say Neil and Bas have kind of, they've got one moment where they can both take time out of the work in the week. But he needs to get more time, they need to get more time together. What's something that he could do there? Have a sauna. Buy a sauna.
They don't have the time available?
Let's say Neil is a high-powered executive. Yes. Incorporated in something. So what you're going to do is try and synchronize your schedules. So he can do stuff that you're doing, you can do stuff so that there's more time to be able to invest deeply. And then ultimately, what do we want to happen here? Is that he would adopt the whole same thing that he would invest into a few. So be with Jesus, become like Jesus, abiding deeply, investing into the few. We're connecting with non-Christians and Christians, and then we have a broad spectrum to pull from. And I think that this is the nuance as well, is that we may have people here, but we might be putting all of our eggs in one basket. And say, there might be people in our existing microchurches that are actually fatter people that we haven't engaged with. I think we need to discern that. But the other thing that we need to ascertain is maybe we don't have any fatter people in our microchurch. And so we need to continue to fish until we find them. It doesn't mean we're neglecting the others, but we're investing deeply in the few. Is that helpful? Any questions?
Just one observation, I think. I know it goes without saying, but also when you're looking for a fatter person, you're also looking for the fruit of being a disciple. So if they're really good at sharing their faith, but actually not particularly interested in following Jesus very closely, that would be it.
That's right. 100%. Are they willing to be full and overflow, be like Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus does?
Online so we can study it more
in this particular format.